You are listening to the We Need to Talk About Oscar podcast, and this is our interview with Tommaso Ortino, the production designer of Fantasmas.
There is something essential in every space, in every city, in everything that you see that you have to understand and see.
We like to start our episodes by asking the current guest about how they fell in love with films. So, where does your love for movies stem from?
From early on, definitely like everybody. But I think film was one of the things that was always creating some sort of a strong emotional response for me. I noticed from the beginning, watching cartoons and then the first movies with my family when I was little, that I would become the mood of the movie for the few hours after. And then that's one of the few things that did that to me. So it was like an experience. If I was watching, Clint Eastwood and Sergio Leone, I was like, let's go with my brothers afterwards right away. Let's go outside. There was some clear transportation or transformation. So I realized how powerful it was. I watched Dr. Zhivago and I was in love with this person and I don't know who she was, but for a few days I was in love. And so from the beginning, it was definitely some form that I, grew up with. So you don't really are conscious about it, but you slowly, when I got 20 and it was chosen, I chose art. Definitely chose art as my direction. And then I realized it's like movies. Why not? Why not be part of that? And then quickly I had strong experience watching movies that, with all the more intellectually involved, I was definitely more capable of seeing more things. And then I realized that was the thing that I wanted to pursue. I did not know in what form. I just want to be part of that. I was like, how do you make it? And then who does what? And where do we go? And how do we do it? To be part of and realizing why is it so powerful? That was something I realized right away. Movies are the most powerful. And I think more than music, more than paintings and more than sculpture, I think movies is the strongest combination of things. And so I chose the strongest one. And then the one also that made me, I thought I was more fit to be part of. I definitely love the sociability, to be part of a big group doing art. And I entertained the idea of becoming a painter, or the idea of doing more of a solitary kind of art form. And then I definitely thought film fits my needs of being out there, working with other people and definitely moving around while doing things.
And since you've mentioned family and how you, after watching certain movies, reenacted certain scenes with your siblings, are you the only one who pursued filmmaking?
Yeah, and I have a numerous family. I have 3 brothers and 1 sister.
Wow.
But I definitely am the only one. And I was the one that wanted to go play and reenact things. And I was the one that sort of later, when we got our first video camera, I started come up with ideas and I used them as actors and as helpers. But so I definitely was the one that was more influenced by it. But I had, my brothers to play with. So they were great partners in this vision that I had. They definitely loved to go outside and play. Our enemy were the olive trees, and we would create barricades. And, definitely Westerns were a very strong influence at the beginning. And so we created our own world where we had enemies and we could cook outside. We created we call it fortino. They were little encampment that we used our wood that we cut to build these walls around. It was the most fun ever, to be able to do that.
That's basically all we need as children. So yeah.
Yeah, totally.
And to steer our conversation a little towards Fantasmas, the project at hand, the whole feel or vibe to the show, and this applies to the set design as well, is just this super open-minded, but at the same time, weirdly specific. How did your talks with Julio, who is the creator, director, star of the show, shape the look of the production?
Well, yes, I got the script early on, and the scripts were, super fun. I was reading it aloud with my friend, and we had fun reading it. But in the first scripts that I read, there were even more stories, even more sketches, even more characters that were part of the story. So I was like, I know it's like episodic, but still, I thought this is a lot of stories, and clearly there was no description, unification, or element of unity. And I mean, our first conversation was great. It was like an interview, and we already talked about certain sets, and we had fun talking about it. But when we met, and then this was like soft prep, super relaxed. We didn't have strong deadlines. We just met. We were kind of getting to know each other while talking about Fantasmas. It was a very comfortable, beautiful, creative moment. He was chatting about things that he wanted, and I was starting to say things, but mostly listening. So one thing that he made clear from the beginning was like, it's all on stage. Nothing is out of stage. It's going to be a whole built environment. And then that was clear. And then the second thing that I asked him was like, is this always New York? And he said, yeah, it's New York. The character is floating around in New York. We both said, how do we stitch this? How do we put this together? How do we create a visual element, a visual connection with everything? So, and that was a strong need for me, for him. Like, how do we make this character float in a space that it feels the same space, even though, it's very open to flashes and of colors and things. But how do we create the underlining structure that can bind this together? And so we came up with ideas. I came up with this idea of, we did like from the beginning, the idea of a dark surrounding. The idea was like, why don't we create sets that are surrounded by this darkness? And it's not like the darkness is important, but it's part of the element that makes the space that we are describing feel like in a void, but also it's almost like the light is on the space that we care. We kind of assume that the void is full of other spaces, other visual imaginations. But for now, we focus on this one. So that was the kind of feel like the world is there, but now we're going to focus on this. The world is there. Now we're going to focus on this. And then I came up with the scaffolding because I had this reference from a book that was important for me. I told Julio, it's Calvino, Invisible Cities. So this was a very important book while I was growing up. It was definitely a forming book, one of those books that makes you think, cities, they have an essence, they are human. There is something essential in every space, in every city, in everything that you see that you have to understand and see. It's there, but it's not visible. You have to like go to a city and understand it. So that book was my reference for like, what is the essence of New York? What makes New York, New York? I've been here for 20 years, and I fell in love right away. So it's not just a city I stumble upon. I chose it. It's my city. And then I had, Julio shared my love for it. So we kind of thought about that book. And then one of the cities in the book had this, it was all made of scaffolding. It was like a city that was just transforming all the time, changing all the time, being built all the time. It's like this, which is one of the things that I always thought New York, for me, coming from Europe, coming from Italy, where things don't change. I still go back to Florence and there's nothing new. It's the same city. They're frozen in time. And then New York for me was like every 6 weeks, the neighborhood changes, things change, people move in, move out. It's like a city that continues to transform while you are watching it. It's always been impressive to me. And so I thought, scaffolding, maybe that's the sign of a changing city, of a ever-changing city. And also, it created some sort of, the other thing that I thought about reading the scripts is that this is Julio fervid imagination. It's full of images that come in and come out, come in, come out. He's just like, which is also the essence of imagination, I think. It's like, it's almost sporadic. It happens to you. You have this image while you are relaxing. Maybe you're standing, maybe you see something. And so I thought, why don't we create this structure? Also makes sense because to me, imagination gets built easily, but also goes away easily. So why don't we use the scaffolding as skeleton for the imagination? So we had the skeleton, and you can apply your imagination and it goes away, but the skeleton stays there. It fits many things that I thought was interesting and felt very part of my growth, of what I learned, of what I liked. And then the great thing about Julio is that he loved the idea. He liked the idea. He was open to experimenting. I didn't even have to say all these words. I just drew some pictures and made it, and he liked it. So it was like with Julio, it's like I call him the instigator of creativity. You say things and he's open to it. Like even if he's not 100% sure, it makes you keep going. So your imagination gets unleashed, and then he's just like, yeah. And so you feel very comfortable to open up, and to what in other situation I might feel like, oh, it's too crazy. This person's going to get spooked. Like with him was like, yep, no, comfort, open up, unleash whatever you're saying. And then he actually is like, yeah, let's do it. And then that made me feel confident. And then so I built on it. And so I always say to everybody, this is like was a unique experience. It's hard to repeat something like this because it's a perfect combination of elements, that certain maturity in my craft as a showrunner director that was completely open and completely accepting. And so the result is, I think it's there. It's like a very beautiful, unique, creative TV show that we created from nothing, but it was based on all our development as creators. And so I thought it was like a beautiful process. So this ended when we decided on this kind of style. Then we decided how much do we build of each imagination or sets, because we couldn't build fully realized sets for every, and also it didn't make sense. So we created this grading, these levels of like some sets were 5, as in we build all the walls and we see a little bit of the stage until you get to a 1, which is like almost no walls and you see a lot of the stage. So there was like, we created levels for every set, and that was interesting. And then we started working.
As you just said, even when Julio wasn't even 100% sure about the idea or how it would work, he would still be open to it. Is this what you are looking for in a collaboration?
Yeah, I would say that Julio is definitely one of the people that it's easy to visualize something for. I've collaborated with many people and we did many things, but Julio does not need so much visualization, because what I do, these ideas, I express them, but then I do sketches and I do rendering and we do all the possible visualization to make sure that everybody understands what we're about to do and if they like it. But with Julio, he understood right away kind of the feel with a couple of sketches and he liked it, but he had no doubt there was going to be fun or unique. So that kind of collaboration is rare, that kind of like confidence given by a showrunner on something so particular, like it's not an easy thing to say, oh, we're going to build the show on scaffolding. It's definitely particular, but he was like, we're doing everything on stage. This seems like a very interesting idea. And of course we tried. There's also like a matter of like, we were all there. The office was over the stages. So while we were doing things, he could come and see. I would bring him to see things. So he actually had time to sort of see things. That was an element definitely that helped. But yes, Julio is very confident and he definitely gives confidence to his people around, collaborators. So it's one of an ideal collaboration. It's one of the ideal situation you can be as a production designer, for sure.
And as far as imagination goes, it feels like there isn't really a limit or a ceiling to what you can achieve with the set that you're building from scratch. Of course, for example, budget can be a real big limitation. In the same spirit, if we are talking reality, what are some of the limitations you had to face on Fantasmas and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I would say that any production, any world, there is limitations. Nowhere there's no limitation, basically. So I'm just saying that I knew there was going to be limitations. I just did not know exactly where the limit was. So we tested the water. We created certain ideas of sets that were, and then the numbers came back, so they're like, oh, these numbers do not work. We passed our limits. So we went back in mid prep. We went back in with Julio, me and my team and Julio, and we just went over all the location again with the new limits. Say, hey, we have these limits now. But the great thing is that on these new meetings, we created new things. Like, because of the limitations, like, oh, and then instead of like just eliminating things, we just created a little bit different, but sometimes even more interesting things. So Julio and I would definitely both thrive with limitation because they become sort of the boundaries of like, oh, we have to use red. Oh, let me use red. And then red becomes fun. But I would say actually without limitation, I have problems because I do need to know what my limit is, because if not, again, like you said, the imagination goes forever. And then I think we exploited the limitation. Actually, there was never too much of a frustration based on that, but he did have to cut some sketches. Mm-hmm. He did limit some of the, but I think it worked because it was always 6 episodes, and I think it works with, like, it was, again, it was a limitation, but then in the end it works with that magic thing that you were saying, that you saw, that you're watching, and it works maybe with less. So anyway, we had limitation, definitely budget limitation, and because of the cost of things. But we definitely, the trick was that we recreated our pre-production meetings, and we went over every location, and we adjusted to the new limitation, and we made it sometimes even better.
Animals have always been a fairly popular aspect of filmmaking. We don't even have to go back a year or so, or more. Because just to mention 2, Anatomy of a Fall had Messi the dog, and the new Quiet Place prequel has Frodo the cat. However, Fantasmas' non-human star is Bibo, a robot. Its personality is filled with wit and sarcasm, and it's just super funny. How did the idea of Bibo come to life? How could you reflect the reactions and kind of emotions Bibo might display?
Okay, so when the first meetings we had in his office, those very relaxed meetings, no deadline. And I remember on the table, apart from art books that we were referencing, but there was like a lemon, a soft lemon with a beautiful, realistic blue eye in the middle, like a cyclope. And that was like next to me, and I loved it, and I had it in my hand while we were talking. And then there was Pirulin Pimpina. So Pirulin Pimpina was already a character in Julio's world. It's like this little Smurf-like thing that he had found in Oaxaca. And it was like all these things were already watching us. And then Bibo is actually a character that he already had created in his movie Problemista. Bibo exists, not this form. It was a less elaborate form, almost like a cousin in terms of, but Bibo was a character. So this is already part of the universe of Julio. I just helped figure it out with the producer, the team that was going to build a more efficient, more, film friendly robot, Bibo. And so we had we created some reference for Bibo to have a little bit of more, details and capabilities and design. But again, these were already part of Julio's group of friends. Like he has this imaginary, great, not imaginary friends. Like, Melf will be the new friend. So he does animate things that are not animated. And he does make things alive, like imagination that, looks around and everything is part of everything. So, but these are his friends from before Fantasmas. So Pirulin Pimpina and Bibo were already his friends. So like he brought all his, real friends on the show that are incredible, talented people that he's close to. Bibo came as a old friend, basically, that he wanted to, show the world again.
I recently chatted with the cinematographer of the show, Sam Levy, who, by the way, speaks really highly of you. And what I do want to ask you is, what are the usual hurdles or at times even fights you have to get through or over with different DPs on each project? And here especially, what was your collaboration like with him? I mean, Sam.
Yeah, Sam and I, like, we started working together at the same time on the job. He was shooting something on during prep, so he came a couple of times, but he was following our, conversation that Julio and I were having about the idea of the sets. And this particular job was complicated not complicated, but it was so art heavy that, our schedule, that we collaborated with the first AD, and then we had to create a schedule possibility of the limitations of the stage and how many sets we could build. So we created 4 phases of sets that we could move and change during weekends. So it was all, usually the schedule is also based on days and nights and photography needs, but this was just our department needs. And then the schedule was created based on that. There were some actors, of course, cameos that we had to respect, but we worked through it. So when we started working with Sam, it was definitely important to understand how, we light this. We had the reference of a set enveloped by void, but of course, the void is not really a void. There's all these sets around, there's all this world around. So with Sam and his team, we created, like, it was important to position all the sets and to find a way to light from above all this, and to be able to isolate enough the rest of the sets while we were shooting our main set. And then, of course, very important was, like, one of the elements that we decided as a unifying element that was not just the scaffolding, but was the backdrops. So we decided to have an art piece of New York representing every set. So if there was a window, if there was an opening, we would put this backdrop. The idea was, like, big, beautiful painted backdrop. But then, realistically, a painted backdrop is very, very complicated to light and to maintain this darkness. And then we were talking about the big street set that we couldn't build. And so we wanted to do maybe projections. And then because of that, and the street scenes are beautiful now. That was definitely the fruit of limitations. Like, it started being as a very built thing, but then we couldn't. And then we said, why don't we bring this projection element? And then we thought it would not be very unifying to just have that as a projection. So we kind of decided, for many reasons, but also to have the backdrop being projections. And so that was great. And then Sam, was definitely helping and did the great work to figure out how to light the set and not disturb the projection. Because that's always, a very complicated element. Projections they get very lit by the set because they cannot be too far. Anyway, so there was some technical issue, but then, Sam had a great spirit and a great easy way to do things. Like, again, the whole vibe was so relaxed and very beautiful. Again, we had problems, we solved it. We had things, we never panicked. And Sam is definitely somebody who has this energy, and with Julio and him, it was a great combo. Like, their energy was always, like, relaxed, happy, jokey, funny, and nothing was too serious. Nothing was, like, so dramatic that we couldn't laugh about it. So he brought definitely a beautiful energy. And then he definitely embraced with us this idea of these sets to be this beautiful lit going into the void. So we couldn't do it, without working together. Like, we can build a set, but then it's like, so we figured out how to do that, to realize that. And again, he did an incredible job at being able to light all these sets and, to be able to plan it, to figure out how to not disturb the other ones, and then to prep without disturbing while we were shooting. It was like one space also. Great collaborator. And he shows, we were not trying incredible, but he shortlisted with Julio for so long. And then it came true. Like, when they were there and the time was constrained, they were quick and they were able to solve things quickly. And he and Julio were very adamant on these overheads, which, were very important. And, they helped the show to create this, where you are, because at the beginning you have this, okay, we're going into this island, and then you go into the island. So again, it was one of the collaborators together with Chloe at the costume. Like, we collaborated well and we created this incredible smooth piece that is Fantasma.
Love to hear it. I actually have the term or word projections written down in my notes for this interview. And I would really like to dig just a little bit deeper into this aspect of the show and how you could incorporate these projections into the production design. You mentioned distance, but I'm sure there are so many different things you have to consider. Like one thing that popped into my head is maybe even the different surfaces you can project on, or what else?
I mean, it was definitely the most improvised thing that we came up with. Like, again, the idea was like a painted or printed backdrop that was, in my mind, easier. But then the projection gave us so much, our imagination went crazy. It was like, oh, projection, they project light. We don't have to light them. And it's like, and it's going to be this glowy element, might help. But obviously, it was not a difficult process, but it's definitely some trial, some readjustments. We definitely had like the first week. After the first week was like, maybe we should do some. But we did some testing before. And Jordan Lovelace is the artist. Him and I worked on the creation of this based on like so many references. We had like Thomas Hart Benton, the artist, and Paul Cadmus. They were all artists that were very important. Julio, which stressed from the beginning that he wanted this magical world, but he wanted to have a little bit of an eerie element to it. So that was the importance. Like, we're not choosing images. The image should be feeling surreal, but also a little eerie, like a little uncomfortable maybe. And so Jordan created this beautiful tableau, and then the first projections and then camera were like different colors. And I was like, how do we do this? So with Patience and with Sam, we worked on, with the projection designer, we worked on tweaking the colors to make sure that they wouldn't lose definition stuff. And then in post-production, Sam told me, like when I met him last time, they figured out something that was a new tool for him that created a beautiful glow and could, again, give all the power back to the backdrop and preserve the colors. Because that's the thing that with projections, like definition might be good, the light might be good, but the colors might have been lost in the process. And then sometimes we're too much towards the green, but definitely they solved it, and we solved it while we were there. But then definitely in post-production, they definitely brought everything to the original image, which was a miracle again of post-production capabilities. But yes, it gives the show an incredible, unique element, I think. So it's not just black, but you see these images. They're clearly fictional, but they're alive somehow, and they're very New York. But it was important to give that glow, and the projection that gave the power of this backdrop became more alive. So I was happy with the limitation that brought us to projections. It was an incredible intuition. It really helped the show.
When we were setting up this interview, you told me that after this week, things are going to get a bit complicated. And as far as I know, you are attached to quite possibly my favorite director's long-awaited upcoming project. I'm talking about Todd Solondz's Love Child.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some rumblings about it starting production this July. And it is July. Could this be, or is it just wishful thinking on my side?
Well, yes, it's, I don't know if I'm, I'm saying too much, but it's on hold. We were ready to go, and then we scouted the places to shoot, but it was put on hold because of, limitations that we talked about many. So it's not happening this July, but it's not, it might happen soon. It's just on hold for now. Let's hope for the best. Let's keep dreaming about it.
Tommaso, thank you so much for taking the time. It was really fun talking to you and getting your insights on this wonderful show.
All right. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Absolutely. Cool. Amazing. Take care.
Ciao, ciao.